Your alternative talk radio contact. The Planet. KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complaisance, people went to and fro of the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design, man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Into the Fray. Before we get to edition 3 for Creepy Florida, I kind of have a massive announcement to make. My very first book, of which I co-wrote with acclaimed and best-selling author G. Michael Hoff, is now available on Amazon. It is titled Beyond the Fray, Bigfoot. It includes both encounters you know and love from my show and several that are documented for the first time anywhere. It is available in both Kindle and paperback versions, and if you'd like a signed and personalized copy, simply send $19.99 through PayPal to my email address, shannonlegros@gmail.com. And this does include free shipping, but to the US only. Now, once you get your book, please share a photo of you with it. Doesn't matter if it's the Kindle or the paperback. Tag us. We'd love to see it. And please, 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 this is so important. It's important to any and every author and podcaster really out there. We say it ad nauseum. Once you are done, please leave a rating and review on Amazon. Also, there is a second part to this announcement. So, Jeff and I have also created not only a new book, which subsequently will lead to more books based upon my show, but we have created Beyond the Fray as a publishing house. So, if you've got an idea or a book you've been sitting on, get a hold of us. Our email address is beyondthefrayllc@gmail.com. Now, these can be fiction or non-fiction works. However, we are going to keep the subject matter under the umbrella that ITF itself lives. So, that means anything paranormal, UFOs, cryptids, true crime, scary stories, etc. Again, that email address is beyondthefrayllc@gmail.com. If you have encounters you'd like included in a future publication, but would rather not share it on the show, get a hold of me at shannon@intothefrayradio.com, or again, our beyondthefrayllc@gmail.com. News hit yesterday on social media of the book, and I know many of you have already ordered your copies, Kindle or paperback, of Beyond the Fray Bigfoot, and even your personalized copies, which will be getting out to you very soon. And last but not least, I am humbled to even have the opportunity to not only do the podcast, but now to have turned it into a book. And I want to thank G. Michael Hoff, of course, for his work on that. And a huge thank you to anyone that's trusted me enough to come on my show over the years. And also, of course, to you, the listener. I could not have done any of this without you. All right, so with that, time for a little Creepy Florida. So I have here with me tonight on this episode, Mark Muncy, Kari Schultz. She, like Mark mentioned earlier, she's around. She might pop in and out. And then, of course, Elizabeth Abbott, who Mark has also co-authored a couple different books with. Welcome to the show, guys. We are here to cover Creepy Florida, and this is edition 3, finally.
Yeah, we're still just scratching the surface, and I'm excited to talk more. And Elizabeth's been with us on a lot of these trips, so she's got some insights. And Kari, I'm sure, will chime in. She's not 100%, but she's willing to help out when she can. So
Yeah, and Mark makes a great point because I still have a ton left of the book, even from the other pages that we've already covered. There is so many stories chock full in creepy Florida. So, don't think that just because we've done 3 editions, which is a lot for one book, that nowhere near covers what stories they have added to it. And of course, you guys have gone to every single one of these locations. There is photos of the locations in there, as well as, of course, the usual lovely addition of Kari Schultz's illustrations. So, yes.
Yes.
Oh, I hear her there. Hi, Kari.
Hi.
How is your lizard doing? The free roaming lizard, the massive lizard that likes to snuggle in blankets and stuff. How is the lizard?
He's doing great. He's gone to bed for tonight. He goes to bed at sundown, but he's gotten bigger.
And he's gotten a couple roommates now.
Oh.
We have Missy, our.
I think you knew about Missy.
I think you knew about Missy, our python.
And now we have pajamas.
Who's pajamas?
Pajamas. He is a banana?
He's a banana pied paradox.
Oh, cool.
Banana pied paradox, another
He's a
snake.
teeny tiny little baby snake.
He's a tiny one. Sounds like the lizard is much like my birds. It's kind of, they're on autopilot. Once the sun goes down, they're like, I'm done. I gotta go
The
night.
snakes are the opposite. There, once the sun goes down, they're up.
Yeah. They want to crawl out and snuggle with you in bed, but they really
They
can't
passed
do that.
on my name. I wanted to call it Murder Britches, but pajamas stuck, I guess. So.
Murder britches.
That was there when we picked it up. I got to pick the name this time.
They got red rum britches over there, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so let's jump in here.
Let's tell some ghost stories for Christmas. Let's bring back that classic tradition.
I mean, that's, if we're really going to talk about it, Christmas is, that's where it got it started. It's pretty damn creepy. People don't realize it's not all these bright lights and snowflakes. It's pretty dark, actually. So yes, let's tell some creepy stories for Christmas. All right, so we are going to start at Stannis.
Okay, yeah. Now, Stannis is near Claremont, which is just a little kind of east of Orlando on your way back towards Tampa, but it's kind of north, so it's not like following that I-4 dead zone corridor. And there was a restaurant there called Stannis, and it had basically the first floor was the restaurant, and then above it was a bunch of apartments. And they used to see this ghost there that was quite unusual. It was large and stocky and had really long arms, but no fingers. And it was very shadowy, and it would reach out for you. And after a little while, what they noticed, it was actually reaching out for a small shadow, a child's shadow. And so maybe it was some sort of thing trying to get the child. No, the child shadow started becoming a bit more visible, and people could see facial expressions and stuff, and people started seeing finally it was just seeing a little boy. And it was about this time that the restaurant closed, and it was kind of abandoned for a little while, but people in the apartments were still living in the apartments upstairs and would hear noises downstairs, like glassware and stuff moving around and stuff like that. It reopened as a Beef O'Brady's for a short while. Seemed to be one of those places that couldn't seem to keep a business very long, but they keep trying to eke out a living in this spot. Somebody's just not managing it right, that sort of thing. So the Beef O'Brady's was there for a little while. And at that point, the little boy ghost and the creepy shadow guy became like talking points amongst the crew. The crew were known to talk about him. And they started seeing a third spirit. And this would be more like a classic gray lady. And she seemed to be motherly to the little child ghost and would like try to protect him from the shadowy figure. It closed again, and now it's a Gators bar. Again, they still see the ghosts and they still talk about it. We went there for dinner, and every waiter and every bartender had a story about something that had happened with them. So just one of those. You can have a nice meal, watch the game, and get some beers, and then hear some creepy ghost stories.
One of the most terrifying things I think about that story is the fact that there was a restaurant called Beef O'Brady's. I mean, who is Brady and why are we making meals out of him? I mean, this just sounds really wrong.
It's kind of a chain down here, so there are a few of them. They're kind of like like a poor man's Applebee's. They're pretty
Gotcha.
pretty
like
basic. So,
Beef
yeah.
O'Brady's. All right. No, the dark figure with the no fingers. I mean, that was unique. That was something I don't think I've quite heard before. So I like that aspect of it.
Yeah, because you usually always hear about the spidery fingers or the long fingers, and this is obvious. It's like a clubbed hand or something. It's very specific. It's not like a fist. It's like a hand with no fingers, and it's very descriptive. Almost everybody said the same thing.
It's interesting. So, I wonder what happened to its fingers.
That's the question. And the problem is doing the history of that area and doing the research, I can't find a single death record of anybody in the building. There's nothing specifically dramatic happened there, and there's certainly no stories of kidnappings or molestations or anything that I could find in public records. But that kind of stuff doesn't always come out in public records. And this would have been a very old case because that building's been there for quite some time. So, but it doesn't stop us from looking, and someday we might stumble on it.
Yeah, something that John Paul Capice had brought up at some point, and others, of course, is that when something really dark manifests, it kind of comes through a little messed up. I mean, we've talked about that before, too. They're missing limbs or heads, or in this case, probably its fingers. So it sounds like it might be something pretty nasty there. Yeah,
we were discussing ghosts earlier, and we were talking about the American ghosts lie to us. Patrick Swayze and Slimer and all these. It's like, what was the other one? Oh, I can't remember. But anyway, just the nice ghosts, Casper. Even and all that. But the real ghosts some seem to be just like twisted, ancient just pieces of the people they once were, and some all they have is vengeance, some all they have is wrath, some all they have is anger, some all they have is sadness. So you're getting pieces, not always the whole thing.
All right. Now, it wouldn't be a eerie, creepy, freaky edition if we didn't have a witch in every single one, pretty much. So this time we've got the Hog Island witch.
Oh, now this is an amazing place. There's a place called Hog Island. It is in one of the girls' favorite places to pronounce.
All right, I got this. It is in the Withlacoochee
State Forest. Yeah, you got it. Withlacoochee, one word. That's good.
You really got to almost sneeze it out, don't you?
Yeah, almost. Yes. Yeah, almost. The area was called Croom, and it was an old settlement area just near where Brooksville is now. And it was a lot of pioneers in the area, a lot of little settlements, and the area wasn't like a big city at this point, but they were. Brooksville was the main town that was basically the breadbasket for the Civil War for the Confederates. They sent all their stuff up north through the port there. They went to land from Brooksville was kind of like the inner land of it. And what happened was this town of Croom started dying off because Brooksville was growing so big. But that area had a lady who helped take care of them. She would provide midwife services and healing services. She lived out in the swamp, sounds familiar, right? We all hear this story. And she was just, the town healer. And of course, 1894, 1895 roll around. We have two of the worst winters in history in Florida, which caused a lot of people to flee back up north and leave Florida for good, because of two bad winters. And then who do they blame? Well, it's got to be the witch who lives in the swamp. The lady who's, she's poisoning us. She's causing the skies to, the sun to not come out. So they go out and they basically grab her and brought her to an old oak tree and lynched her. And the stories vary on whether she died immediately, but most of the stories agree she lived for a couple days screaming. And when they just couldn't take it anymore, they finally lit her on fire. And now...
Yeah. And so now there's a lot of campgrounds and a lot of, recreational things around that area. So people will go and they will see this crazed woman either asking them for help or coming up and like attacking their cars or their vehicles or their tents or their whatevers. And the state troopers in that area, actually, they get a lot of calls about this, reoccurring pretty much crazy woman that is either attacking them or, wanting help or screaming, something like that. And, at this point, yes, they do respond to the calls, but whenever they go, there's nobody there. There's no evidence. There's
slash tents. We spoke to some campers who had their RV had some mysterious claw marks on the side. Could have been anything. The area itself, Hog Island gets its name because it was an area that was full of wild boar, and it still is at the time. And you're likely to see them out there. It's a beautiful park. And some boys from Orlando overheard these legends, and they were kind of inspired by it. And so they created the mythology of their own witch and made a movie called The Blair Witch Project. And that is all based on our Hog Island witch. Mm-hmm. They just transferred it up to Maine.
That part was very interesting. Didn't know that. I put a star next to that part of the story, and then I wrote nope in capitals next to the fact that the campers in tents have reported hearing the woman run her claw-like fingers along the side of their tent and have seen her burning body run past their campsite. I put a nope by that. So,
yeah. Some of the witness reports, man, it stopped. One couple we talked to, they used to go camping every year for their honeymoon, and now they don't want anything to do with camping again.
Like, we'll go to Disney instead.
Yep.
at quadruple the cost. What did they see? What did they experience?
They again had they were woken up in the night by they heard the sounds of screaming. They got up, assumed a nearby camper was in distress. They followed it out, to see what was going on. They were on their phone with 911 saying, "We hear screaming. We're not sure what's going on." They were getting a little closer, and the dispatcher's telling them to stay safe but see if they can get more, information. And that's when they see her running through the woods in white, on fire, hair on fire, a white fire, they said. And she turned, and the guy said he just saw sunken eyes. And that's when he knew this wasn't human or whatever. And when the police finally showed, he didn't know what to say. Said, she ran off that way.
Yeah, see? Nope.
Yeah.
And it's easy to make light of it, but if you're actually there, think about actually being there.
Know.
And they're dead serious. They won't go back there and camp.
Yeah, they refused to go camping again, which is, and it's funny because they were showing the wedding pictures and the honeymoon pictures from years and years of honeymoons, and then then it stops, and it's and it was Disney. It was pretty funny. So
everyone's like, "You go to Disney? You love Disney?" You're like, "Yeah, I do now."
We'll skip the Haunted Mansion, but we love it.
Yeah, we lived that. It was not a hologram. Wish it was. All right. Next we are okay. Now this one, and I have a question about it once we get to it, and you may guess what it is, but I'm not sure. But it's the May House and its 13 ghosts.
May Stringer. We were there quite recently. Yeah. We've been there quite a few times. It's in Brooksville. It is maybe 20 minutes from Hog Island, and it is in Brooksville proper. It was built. It was part of the early Settlement Act, where if you built land and lived on it for a little while, you could claim the land. And this one family came down, they took it over, and when
Mark, is somebody on a keyboard? Sorry, I hear something.
Sorry. I was scrolling a mouse. That was my bad.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I'll move it from.
No, that's okay.
That was the problem. The guy he founded the land, Richard Wiggins. That's what I was looking for. I was just looking for his name, Richard Wiggins. And then he sold his land that he had covered. It was basically 160 acres to John May, and May built a big 4-room house on the land. And he lived there with his wife for a few years, and then he passed away. Now, his wife, Morena, she stayed in the house, and they turned it into a full plantation. And she remarried a man named Frank Saxon, a Confederate soldier. Just a few years after that, she died during childbirth. Now, Saxon sold the house to Dr. Sheldon Stringer at around 1869. And Stringer expanded on the house, and eventually it had 14 rooms
and 4 stories.
Yeah, and it's huge, and the ceilings are super high. He was practicing medicine and in the house, and some say he was actually using the house to house patients. But the Stringer family lived there until a long time. I want to say until the 60s, 70s. And then finally the house was sold again, and now it is owned by the Hernando County Historical Museum Association. And they basically have turned the house into a museum.
Since 1981.
Yeah, they have all these different rooms. One's themed like a radio communications room. One's themed military. It has a lot of military stuff. One is
the medical wing.
The medical wing, which is the Doc Stringer's exhibit of all his old offices and stuff. And then upstairs is the bedrooms, and they've kept those pretty close. And then you go up to the 3rd floor, and that is where things get a little weird.
Yeah.
And then there's an attic above that has some other sad stories to it. Supposedly, there are at least 13 ghosts in this house. Many, many more could be, or quite a few less.
There's some staples, though, in that house. So there's someone known as Mr. Nasty. So Mr. Nasty is upstairs in the attic.
Yeah, and they thought he was originally one of his Stringer's patients, but they started realizing he actually kind of came with one of the things donated to the Historical Society, an actor's trunk.
Mm.
And they think he's very attached to that. And he's starting to lose his nickname as Mr. Nasty because people have realized he's not a super nasty guy if you don't provoke him, if you don't treat him like, a circus clown or something. And they start realizing if you leave offerings for him on his actor's trunk, he's in the opposite. In fact, he seems to be quite genuinely happy about it, and he will leave EVPs that aren't his usual. The reason he got the nickname Mr. Nasty is he said some things that are definitely not for an uncensored South Park episode.
Mm.
But that's also to people that go up there and invoke it because because that was the place that we went with Memento Mori PI, I believe they call themselves, and we did a ghost investigation there. And when we went up to him, for example, Mark actually got the idea that he was trying to do a monologue. And so we kind of just let him, he was fine to us is the point. And we did some temperature readings and things like that. And everything in that room, except for our, alive bodies was, blues and purples and indicating cold. But if you put that radar over the trunk itself, it was red. It was red hot. It was as hot as Mark, me, Kari, everyone else in the room. It looked like
a living, breathing thing. Just this old actor's trunk. It was crazy. It had the rest of the room was like a 70s and 80s, and that trunk was like 97 or 99. Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
So a lot of the ghosts feed off of that being items that are brought in. So what is it? In the 2 bedrooms, we have Jessie May, the little girl. The little girl. People leave her offerings too. Like, they'll bring her extra toys, or they'll bring her, we brought her Tootsie Roll Pops because it was something like little Tootsie Rolls because, they were made back in that day. And
it's just something she would have been familiar with. And paranormal groups love Jessie May because she will often talk to them and play with them. And it was pretty funny. The recording we got was, the impression we got was that it was, what did she say?
When I went into the room personally, I got the impression the only thing that was going through my head is I don't want to play anymore, or I don't want to play today. And so we left her alone. But it was interesting when we were in there, we would go into a room and then we would either feel a presence leave or we would actually hear someone leave. And for context, it was just us three and then the 2 investigators in the house. The docents were downstairs. Well,
the May Stringer will be really nice about, they know they got ghosts. And they love when people come to investigate. So they rent the house out for investigators for $100 a night, which is not bad for a paranormal, investigation. But the docent has to stay with you because they don't want you touching any of the museum stuff or anything like that. Except when we were with wonderful Memento Mori and Erica Dordino, who you should talk to sometime. He's got lots of stories. He's got a lot of scientific stuff for ghosts too. He and his wife were there, and since they do that one so much, the museum trusts them enough, just lets them go. And so we got basically the house to ourselves for the night. It was wonderful. There's James. James is the other main ghost. James is a tragic love story. He went to war and was due to be married. When he came back, his wife to be had married another, and he didn't know what to do with himself. And it had basically, coming back from war, what we would now call post-traumatic stress. And then coming back to that, all we do know is that he hanged himself from that 4th floor, very convenient attic.
Yeah, there's like an attic, but then there's like another attic. So like kind of like where you would go if you wanted to get into the rafters to like do repairs or things like that.
And it's got a nice big drop.
Yeah.
And that's
So
where he decided to hang himself.
There is record for that did happen.
Yes, that one's recorded.
Wow.
And now they're starting to do some more research. Now, of course, after we go to press, everything hits. There's a small graveyard just outside the house, but there are only a couple bodies. There's like 8 tombstones because most of the tombstones were stolen from a nearby cemetery. Now, they were all Doc Stringer's patients. So somebody brought them there to show that these were patients who died there. But they now realize nobody knows where any of the family members are buried. Nobody knows where Doc Stringer is buried. And he probably would have been buried on the land, and the family would have been buried on the land. They just don't know where. So now they're starting the Historical Society owns about several blocks around it. So they're going to start doing ground radar penetration because they want to find out. Plus, there were a lot of slaves at this plantation, and none of them are recorded buried anywhere. So, I mean, it could be anywhere in that whole county. There's several cemeteries nearby. Spring Hill Cemetery is a place nearby, and we had a spooky encounter there. And Kari and I, our first time visiting there, we had kind of an unexpected spooky encounter because you drive out in the middle of nowhere. A wild boar came out and came right up to the edge of the fence, and it was as big as our truck.
Oh,
it was insane.
Yeah, that's terrifying. You don't mess with those things, man.
No, exactly.
I take the ghosts.
But then, we went there another time because there's a lynching and some other terrible things that are associated with it, but no one's ever really proven that they happen there. But a lot of ghost hunters like to go to that cemetery too, because there's another playful child ghost there that sends a lot of evidence their way.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens once they start to mess with the ground, if they do find anything, if that will release any of the spirits or if it will ramp up the activity there, right? Exactly.
And no one really knows. And like I said, and all the while, Mr. Nasty up in the attics, just doing his own thing.
Right. We kind of like him. I mean, he's only nasty if you're a jerk to him, like you guys said.
Right,
so
exactly.
Just don't be a jerk.
And you're guy when you're alive, you're going to be a crotchety old guy when you're dead, so.
Now, I hate to do this, but this is how my brain works. Here's my question. And it's probably, everyone's going to roll their eyes like, oh, it's so obvious. Like, what a dumb question. But, I mean, the movie 13 Ghosts, is there any tie-in there? Because it sounds like the ghosts in the May house are so very different, much like the spirits in the movie 13 Ghosts.
Exactly. And I think it's just one of those, the number 13 kind of stands out. And I think that's mostly because it has 14 rooms. And, they don't want to say the bathroom's haunted.
Right.
But,
Yeah. I was just wondering.
Elvis didn't visit there. Elvis visited down the street at the wonderful Coney Island hot dog stand, though, which is still there. He was. I'm tangenting here. Sorry.
No, that's okay. You're full of stories. May as well share.
You go visit May Stringer. You can go visit the 1885 Train Museum, which is also super haunted, which is maybe 2 miles away. You go out to Hog Island. You can go to the Florida National Cemetery, which is basically Florida's Arlington, where there's over 30,000 soldiers buried from almost every major conflict except for the Revolutionary War. And that's an amazing site. And that's all within this little half-hour area. Plus, they have the big Brooksville Raid, which is coming up again, which is they did this major Civil War reenactment for a thing that didn't really happen that we talked about in Freaky, Florida.
Yeah.
That's all right there. And the beautiful thing is that Silver Springs was this old water parks where they filmed The Creature from the Black Lagoon, and a lot of underwater things from movies were filmed there because it's so clear the water's there. The Tarzan movies were filmed there, and they released the monkeys afterwards, and now they're still out there breeding, and we have this tribe of monkeys that live in the forest out there that have herpes that are deadly to humans. So Florida.
It's real lighthearted. Yeah.
You got a little Florida. But back to the ghosts. Sorry.
Mind the poo throwing. You don't want to catch anything from those monkeys. Good Lord.
And they're very vicious. They feed off of bird feeders and deer feeders for hunters, and so they've kind of gotten used to people, and that's that's great.
It reminds me of the movie. Here I go with the movie, but Outbreak. You know, she's feeding that damn monkey, and then
virus, man.
Yeah. Don't make Dustin Hoffman come after you now.
Yeah, he'll figure it out. Dustin Hoffman or Jeff Goldblum out there.
That's right.
But anyway, right down the street from May Stringer, I mean, literally right down the street, is this place called Coney Island Hot Dogs. What happened was Elvis was filming a movie in Silver Springs, and he was going to film part of it in Weeki Wachee, which is the mermaid place a little ways down that we talked about in Erie, Florida. That one of his crew members told him, "Hey, the best hot dogs in the world are right down the street." So he stopped filming on this movie, stopped the whole production to go eat a hot dog at this stand. Loved it so much that the next day he stopped filming again and brought the whole crew to eat hot dogs at this stand.
That's a dang good hot dog.
It is a tacky, wonderful little drive-in stop, and it is probably some really good hot dogs and Kari's favorite French fries in the world, right?
Yes. They look unassuming, but then you put them in your mouth and you're like, wow.
Now I'm really bummed I didn't get one of those while I was in Florida.
Yeah, next time.
Yes.
Yeah, they got flaw dogs and chili dogs.
They got boiled peanuts.
And they got boiled peanuts. That's caviar of the South.
That's right. Yeah. Food. Well, that and the what do they call bull testicles?
That's a Western thing. That's all you guys.
Yeah, Rocky Mountain oysters.
Rocky Mountain oysters. No, we stick
don't
with the
have those down there. They got alligator balls down there. What would they call those? Swamp oysters. I don't know.
Swamp oysters. No, we got our gator tail down here.
Yeah.
They do have gator dogs, and they have some really good wings too.
I've not tried gator.
It's your classic drive-in. Diners, drive-ins, and dives type of place. Love it. But anyway, so you can eat there and then go ghost hunting, and you'll get some strange emissions on your recording devices, which we often get, that we have to all tag going, that was me. That was my stomach. That was the chili dog.
That would be me. It's constantly either my throat making strange noises or my stomach. So, yeah.
We call it our tag was Ghost of Elvis.
Yeah. That's a good one. In fact, I think this next story, because holy cow, I'm just glad that he didn't think of creating something like in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, where it's that delicious sausage story where he takes the people and puts them in the meat grinder. I can see that picture now. So it's the Gonzales Clinic. Holy smokes.
Oh, yeah. Well, now we call it the Don Vicente Inn. It was once the Gonzales Clinic. Now, it ties into an ancient Hellview thing from back when we ran our haunted house. We had we based all our characters back then on historical, mythology of Tampa Bay. And one of my favorite characters from Tampa fiction that was fact was a character called Madame Orr. And she ran a bordello, and it was called the Orr House, which I thought was just the perfect play on words ever for bordello, right?
Yeah, but big time on that one.
Exactly. She was so infamous. She basically ran the town. The mayor, the city council, the police chief would all actually come and host the beauty pageants she held at her bordello to see who was pretty enough to work at the bordello. How crazy is that, right? It was part of Ybor City in Tampa, which basically had a Sin City type rule from the comics where the police weren't allowed in there. Nobody was allowed in there unless they invited them. They ran their own law. They ran their own, everything. And it was right next to the docks. It was part of the cigar industry. It was mostly run by the Cuban immigrants and the German immigrants and the Italian immigrants. So nobody really wanted to deal with the area. We talked about the Cuban Club, in Freaky, one of the most haunted buildings in America. That's right there. Now, 3 doors down was the bordello, and it was on top, the second floor of a big arcade building, and it had a couple more floors above that had rooms for everybody. And across the street was the Gonzales Clinic, and in the Gonzales Clinic there was a Dr. Alvinol, who was a wonderful doctor, took care of people for pennies on the dollar. This is the 1920s. He took care of everybody that he could, 1880s to the 1920s. The only problem is he had a son, and his son was not all there, as far as we can tell. He kind of had to hide his son. So he put his son up in the bordello across the street in those apartments upstairs. And his son would use his dad's name to help take care of the girls that worked in Madame Moore's bordello. He would do what he was supposedly taking care of them, but he was actually experimenting on them and doing strange, unnecessary surgeries and all that. And just crazy stuff. And when they would pass away, he knew he had to get rid of the bodies. So he would take them through a tunnel. Now, this is Tampa, so, we're not known for our basements or anything because everything floods. But Ybor City had built their own sewer system. Again, they didn't want city involvement, so there's no planning, there's no maps, there's nothing. They keep discovering tunnels every time they try to repave a road over there that they didn't know about. Of course, the reputation is that the tunnels were used for smuggling and all that. They probably were, but they were really built as a sewer system. But what he did was there was a tunnel from his hotel under Madame Moore's over to the Gonzales Clinic where they had their furnace. And their furnace was for getting rid of amputated body parts and getting rid of biohazardous materials. And he would get rid of his failed experiments.
It's so convenient.
It was very handy, right? He was, at least he was clinical about it. The story goes that he was eventually caught, but there is no records. Again, this is Ybor City, so justice was swift and like the Wild West, and very little got out unless it was wanted to get out. And so no one really knows what happened to him, but years later, the Gonzales Clinic closed and becomes the Don Vicente Inn, and they make the basement into a wonderful restaurant and bar. And they walled up the furnace. They didn't take it out. They just walled it up. And there's actually a table of the restaurant that's right in front of that old spot that was the entrance to that tunnel entrance. And people there all the time would see a shadowy figure, usually accompanied by what looked like a nurse figure, dragging something through the wall and then disappear. So who was the nurse? Who was who was helping him? Did he have an accomplice? It's all a lot of stories. Now, Madame Moore herself, we know the only thing I could find about her back in the day, the reason she intrigued me so much was I was a huge Teddy Roosevelt junkie. And I loved everything to do with Teddy Roosevelt, read his biographies, read every book he had. He's my favorite president. He came to St. Pete a lot. He came to Tampa a lot. He, they rode the train out of here down to Miami to get the boat to Cuba for the Rough Riders. Stayed at the old Tampa Hotel, which is now Tampa University. University of Tampa, and the old Henry Plant Hotel. Anyway, he had a couple of his Rough Riders had gone to her bordello and didn't come back. And he was so upset about it that he insisted that the city shut him down. And all we know is that at one point there was a fire there, and it involved the Rough Riders. Mm-hmm. And that was when we went from Hellview, and I turned that into a whole From Dusk Till Dawn story.
Right.
Because I was like, there's no normal story about Teddy Roosevelt and a whorehouse burning down. You know, and Matamora was lost to history at that point. No one knows what happened to her. Mm. So, you know, of course, we reinvented her for Hellview. Yeah, so that's why it's one of my favorite stories, is because, man, you got creepiness, you got a mad scientist, you got ghosts, and, you know, in a lawless, wild city, and then some Teddy Roosevelt thrown in on the side.
And this part is just kind of made me chuckle a little bit. It says that the bordello was eventually closed, and the building is now the property of the Church of Scientology.
Yes!
I'm like, wow. All right, then. There you go.
Go there. I'm like, you got a different type of spooky.
You know. Which one's scarier? I don't know.
Yep.
I think I know. All right, this one's really cool, and one of the reasons it jumped out to me was because you guys actually had a pretty cool experience at this place, and that is the Bellevue Inn.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. The Bellevue Biltmore Hotel, Clearwater Beach, was, again, Henry Plant, who built the wonderful Tampa Hotel, which became University of Tampa, decided he wanted something over on the Gulf Coast, because, you know, across the bay. And he ran his line, his train line over there, and he wanted a big hotel. There was the Don Cesar was being built. There were a few other big hotels all around. He needed something big for them. So he built this beautiful place called the Bellevue Biltmore Hotel, and it was gorgeous. And it was probably one of the most beautiful buildings we've ever seen. But then, as with all things, it got old and got run down and abandoned. In the 40s, it had been confiscated by the government and made into like all the big hotels, got made into a VA hospital for people coming home from World War II, and eventually given back to the owners. But at this point, everybody's out of money. So just like all the other ones, it disappeared for a while. But they tried reopening it. They kept trying to keep it going until the mid 80s, when they decide, this just isn't working. And to shut it down, and it's abandoned for a little while. And then eventually it becomes, we've got to get rid of it. We've got to tear it down. Now, we were running Hellview Cemetery at the time, and I heard the wonderful news that they were closing it down, and it made me sad. But the wonderful part was that they were selling all the stuff. And I'm immediately like, we have to get some stuff for Hellview. So we went over for the last day, and they were tearing it down, but they had all these people dressed in costumes, and they were in period garb, I guess what everybody's doing now for the since we're coming up on 2020, everybody's kind of doing Gatsby things. This was kind of like that same thing. They had people in bellhops costumes and all this, and there was an infamous ghostly bellhop that everybody saw up on the third floor. Everybody saw him, and everybody was known about it. So while we were there shopping, a local paranormal group came up to us because we knew them all, and they were like, "Hey, you guys, we're going up to the third floor to look for the ghost one last time." I'm like, "Oh, can we come along? Can we tag along?" And they're like, "Heck yeah!" So we get to the top of the stairs, and we're looking down the hall, and sure enough, the bellhop comes out, and I'm like, "Oh man, they got a guy in costume up here. They knew we would come up here." I was like, "Oh, they got us. That's fantastic." And the guy's next to us like, "Yeah, he looks great. Oh my gosh, good job." And I'm like, "Fantastic, man. Good job." And then the hunter on the inn, she looks over at us and goes, "Who are you guys talking to?"
Love it.
And we all went, "Huh?" Looked at her, did the Scooby-Doo. We look at her, we look at the ghost, it's gone. We look back at her, what, where?
All this equipment, all these quote-unquote professionals, all these enthusiasts, and nothing is on.
Right.
Because we're going to set up at the end of the hall.
Right.
So people always ask us, they're like, well, how do you know you feel a thing, or how do you know you've seen a ghost, or have you seen a ghost? And, they're like, I've been to these places and I haven't seen it. And Mark likes to tell that story because it's like, how do you know that you haven't?
Because I thought the guy was legit.
Right.
I mean, we went downstairs and we're like, hey, whoever you had do that, man, he was fantastic. And they're all like, what? What are you talking about?
Like, we don't have a guy dressed in a bellhop outfit. You're like, what?
Yeah, they had bellhops, but just none up there.
Oh, boy.
Like,
love that story.
Yeah, and so that's... Now, they tore it down, except for parts of it, including that part. And it is now the Bellevue Inn. They've restored it. They've reopened it. It's a third of the size it once was, but it is still quite beautiful and lovely, and you can go stay there. And they are open for tours if you just want to go look. It's nice. It's wonderful, and I'm so glad that piece of history is still there for a little bit of it anyway.
Is there still rumors that the bellhop's still walking around and the pieces that are left, or?
The people we've talked to who have worked there now have not seen him yet. He was probably, a little disturbed by all the constructions. No one knows, but they're keeping their eyes open, and we will be the first to know, and we will let you know as soon as we do.
All right, guys. Yeah, well, we're going to close with, it's probably in my top 20 favorite odd paranormal stories like ever, and that is Flight 401.
Yes. I mean, how many ghost movies star Ernest Borgnine? Right?
Yeah.
You can probably count them on one hand, maybe one finger. Yeah. I don't know. And when you got one that's based on a true story, that's crazy. 1972, Flight 401 is coming into Miami. They've been on a long trip. They've been up to New York and a couple other stops, and they're on their way home. Now, this is over the Everglades, which already has ghost stories galore, missing persons, missing bodies, Indian massacres, you name it. This is the big dark spot in the south of Florida, and they're flying into Miami right over it. And pilot Bob Loft, it's a Lockheed L1011, and it's a TriStar. And they're flying in, they're coming in from Miami, and there was a flight officer Stockstill, and then flight engineer Donald Repo. And then there was, basically a full crew. And they're flying in, and as they're descending, they notice that the landing gear indicator has not come on. And they're like, they try cycling it, try turning it off and on again. Classic IT, nothing's working. So they're put into a holding pattern over the Everglades. Just, figure it out. So they were just about 2,000 feet up. So the crew put themselves in autopilot, and Repo climbs down in what they call the hellhole, which I love that's what they call it. And it's basically under the cockpit. It's a little small place you cramp into, and it's hot, and that's where it got its nickname. And there's a small porthole there that you can look out of and see if your nose landing gear is down. And you can also look out and see if the other landing gears are down. And it takes a little bit of time to get down there and get to it. So now what happened is while they're doing that, somebody accidentally turns off the autopilot while they're working on the landing gear. They keep trying to hit the switches. They probably hit just the wrong switch. Now, the other problem is the airline tracker, the radar technicians have been working super long shifts. And this is the end of the day. And this is before they regulated that stuff. This is before the big strike. And basically, the guy wasn't paying attention either.
Yeah.
And so they start descending.
And they're navigating basically through the Everglades.
Yeah, so it's it's just darkness. There's nothing out there. There's no lights anywhere. So they're not noticing how low they're getting. Now, Repo gets down there and he sees that the landing gear's down, but he also sees trees. And he's like, oh my God, pull up. And it was too late. They hit the swamp, 227 miles an hour. Plane explodes, just rips apart. Now, amazingly, there are survivors. Now, the Stockstill and Loft, they died instantly. Stockstill died instantly. Loft, the pilot, died while they were pulling him off the boat. They were putting him onto a boat. Repo actually made it to the hospital. and died in the hospital from his injuries. So in total, 97 of the 163 passengers died, and 2 of the flight attendants. And it was the second deadliest single aircraft disaster in the United States at that time.
It's actually shocking, though, that anybody made it out of that.
How do you survive that? Exactly.
I don't know.
I mean, they were coming in on landing, I guess, is the only thing. Everybody was in their safety harnesses and stuff. So
I mean, they physically survived, but what people don't realize too, I think, is the mental impact that probably had for the rest of their lives.
Oh yeah, they'll never fly again. And I mean, they probably wouldn't sleep for 10 years. It'd be horrible after seeing people burning and screaming and talk about PTSD.
Yeah, and this is 1972, so it's this is major news. But to get to the people, and this is in the middle of nowhere, Everglades. They had to get the swamp boats out to rescue people and stuff like that. Now, the plane, despite fire and all that, actually was salvageable. And so what happened is they started grabbing pieces of it and using it because it was a fairly new airline plane. They started using the pieces from this plane on other Eastern L-1011s. And what happened was, on these other flights, people started seeing Robert Loft or Don Repo, the flight engineer or the pilot. And they would be in their uniforms.
Or one of the attendants.
Yeah, one of the stewardesses swore he was right there fixing an oven, in the galley. And then later on that flight, their oven caught on fire. And it was one of the ovens from the original Flight 401. They would be seen talking to passengers. One woman was sitting, and she saw a guy sitting next to her, and he seemed like he was unresponsive. And so she called an attendant to check on him. And then right as the attendant came up, he just disappeared between them. And so she flipped out and had to be restrained. That's one of those first, nowadays she would have been kicked off the flight, or the plane would have been grounded or whatever. And then when the attendant got, one of the other attendants who had been on the original flight had a photo of Repo, and she showed it to that lady was like, oh my God, that's the guy. There were flights canceled. There were sounds from hellholes on the planes, and they would open it up and there'd be Repo or Loft staring at them and freak out. And then what happened was they later would calm down and go down and look, and sure enough, there'd be something that was about to go wrong, and they fixed it. So now what happens is Eastern Airlines, every time somebody reports one of these things, they pull the logbook from the plane. They pretend like it didn't happen. They give them a fresh logbook. And any crew that reports a sighting was immediately grounded, suspended, and sent for psychological evaluation.
That sounds familiar. That crosses into other subjects, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So immediately, everybody stops reporting it. No more ghosts now. Because Eastern Airlines didn't want to be the ghost airline. Now, at one point, Repo appears and is talking to a guy, and the guy is the vice president of Eastern Airlines. Mm-hmm. And he sees it, and that's when he's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. So they start looking into it, and finally all the pilots and all the staff finally go to the FAA mm-hmm. and say, we've seen some weird stuff. This can't keep going. We can't keep our mouths shut. And so the FAA starts investigating, and sure enough, they find the logbooks have been changed. They find all this stuff. And so it's the first federal document that says you can't put a person on psychological evaluation because they saw a ghost. Mm. And you can't change your logbooks because somebody said they saw a ghost. And what's funny about it all is the two guys were never seen on the same flight ever again. They were always on a different flight, the two of them. And then, and again, they were never described as incorporeal or glowing. They were always just there. A guy in a pilot suit, guy in an engineer outfit.
And they were like showing complications that these planes had. And so it goes kind of back to May Stringer, like, how they're bringing in objects into this one place. Well, obviously taking the pieces from that destroyed airplane and putting them onto other ones is essentially, like, if you believe in the essence of it,
Right.
I'm sure that's what people thought.
Yep. So
that's the theories on it.
So the Flight Safety Foundation, which, the FAA, they basically quote, the reports were given by experienced and trustworthy pilots and crew, and we consider this to be significant. And so Eastern Airlines, basically, former astronaut Frank Borman, was their CEO, and he's like, this is garbage, and he dismissed the report and was like, done. No, don't want anything to do with it. And so, but they eventually had to secretly pull all the parts. They started pulling all the parts from all the planes and getting rid of them.
Sounds like someone may have believed it after all, huh?
They just, to be safe, I think, was the, as we like to say when we go into all our places, when we talk about our beloved Robert and everything, don't poke the bear.
That's right.
This is, if we get rid of this stuff, guess what? Well, it'll get rid of it. And that's what happened. They got rid of it. There are rumors that they did an exorcism over the parts that they actually put into the Hollywood movie version. It's funny, in the movie version, it's just repo. They don't talk about loft at all. They just basically combined them into one character, and that's what it is. Now, a short time later, the site itself, people still see ghostly apparitions there and, faces floating in the water and all that. And it's just maybe 5 miles away that the second crash occurs. Not even 5 miles. It's very close. Flight 5. Oh gosh, now it's
592.
592. And that one has a memorial out on the interstate there that you can go to. But Flight 401 still doesn't have a marker.
Why is that, do you think?
I think it's just because it was 1972 and Value Jet 592 was in 1996.
Yeah.
And it was the internet era and television. So everybody knew 592 and it killed all 110 on it. Maybe it's because there were survivors. Alligator Alley, whenever there's a thing for 401, they still do it. They do it at the Flight 592 marker. And it's just crazy. Just a few hundred yards from each other. These terrible crashes. 25 years apart.
That's crazy. A few hundred yards. I mean, what are the chances of that?
I mean, I'm sure it's a flight path into Miami Airport, but still.
Oh, that's true. It's been the same flight path basically forever since the airport's been there. That's true. That's true.
So, but still, it's odd.
You have the logic answer, and then you have the
there's you got to go the logic first, but it's crazy that they're so close.
Do you guys know if they still utilize repurposed parts from downed aircraft onto working aircraft?
They do on a lot. They do on a lot still. Although I don't think it happens very often because the way planes are built now, when they go down hard.
Yeah.
And
hopefully less frequently.
But thankfully a lot less frequently. Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
I know. Boeing.
How often do we hear about plane crashes on the news now?
That's true. That's true.
All over the world, occasionally, but
A lot of times it's private planes as well.
Yeah,
the small ones seem way more dangerous than the big ones. But I think that Boeing just had a major problem because most of their fleet have got cracks in their frames, and it doesn't get much worse than that as far as cost goes.
737 MAX software glitch, which caused a couple of crashes.
Oh,
They're
God.
like, I think we're just gonna stop making these.
Time to put them down. Let's just say night to those.
They should have put some parts from 401 in there. Maybe those ghosts could have warned them.
Yeah, they could give a heads up.
These were not bad ghosts. They were warning people. They were saying, look, there's going to be a problem on this flight. And sure enough, there would be.
Yeah, at one point, one of them said to someone, we're not going to let another crash happen. Like, they were so just invested in keeping people safe, which was so cool.
Yeah, there will never be another L1011 crash.
Yeah. That's
the quote. It's pretty crazy. They actually use that in the movie, which is, and it's fun to watch that now because it is kind of pretty cheesy, but and then when you think about it, though, it is based on true events, which is crazy. Right. And that's when people say, oh, there's no government. If there were studies of ghosts, I'd believe it. Well, here's a government study of a ghost for you. Why don't you read this? And they'll be like, what? Yeah, the FAA, they actually looked into this because there were so many sightings.
Yeah. Of course, then there's always the CEO with the money on the brain going, this is all nonsense. Don't listen
And
to
of course,
this.
he's an astronaut too. He's a former astronaut, so he's one of those. Yeah, he was also one of the big debunkers of UFOs too.
He's got alien implants. He just doesn't realize it.
Exactly.
That's all. It's just the implant telling him to say all of that. See, got to keep everything on the down low. Well, thank you guys for covering all of those. And as I mentioned, and I'll say it again, just like their other books, we've only scratched the surface. So please go out, get the book. You can get it in, of course, the paperback or the Kindle. People love the Kindles too. And we're going to have you guys on again. Of course, I'm sure you're working on some other things right now.
We are working on some other projects right now. And you can find, if you want a special copy, you can go to erieflorida.com. And you can pay a little extra, and Kari will do a little something nice in there for you, some art. But just going through the website, you'll get some signed copies from us. And we've got some of Kari's art prints are up there now. Soon, some of Elizabeth's jewelry from Kari's art will be up there as well. So, but you can still get those in for your holiday or post-holiday ordering when you get all those Amazon, when you get all those gift cards and you don't know what to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, so.
The flood of gift cards. Not the gift cards are bad. They're fantastic because you get to pick whatever the heck you want.
Exactly. One size fits all. So
I can't thank you guys enough. You're part of my family, and I appreciate you so much. And I know that we're going to talk soon. And I hope that
we've got some other stuff I need to. I'm going to have to call in on your tip line at one point because I got an email that you are going to love.
Man. Really?
And, yeah. And it kind of ties into your UFO project. I got some MIB stuff that is off the chart.
Yeah.
And I cannot wait to go into it with you. So I will save that teaser for at some point we will chat.
Well, Merry Christmas to you guys. And as always, thank you so much for your time. And I know that we will be talking soon. Sometimes I can speak properly.
It's all good. Hey, it's like you're a radio host or something. So,
and but tripping over things all the time.
That's all right. Well, we got to talk some Elvis. We got to talk some ghost stories.
I wasn't expecting the Elvis and the Coney dog. Love it.
Oh, man. Yeah. You are going to love it. And we're filming a thing called Eerie Travels for a local an internet company to be named later. And we're filming that now. So one of the many stops is Brooksville. And we're going to hit May Stringer, and we're going to hit the Coney Island. So I'll send you some footage of that when that comes up.
Kari's like, can we just do that part of the filming now, please?
It's true. You want some more fries.
When you have like a certain food item or a restaurant that you love, it's just, it almost becomes an obsession, and you can almost taste the food, and you're like, I need some of that now.
It's so funny. I took my the producer of the director of this, because Elizabeth's actually producing, but I took we took the director to this because we were just talking about, we were kind of scouting the location. And he's like, why do you want to film in this little rundown place? I'm like, just trust me. And we got in there and we had the hot dog and he tried the fries. We went home afterwards. He was like, yeah, it's pretty good. And then I found out the next day he went and grabbed every one of his friends and family. So we have to go up there. You have to try this stuff. This stuff's amazing.
It was pretty good, he says. You're like, busted. Guess you kind of thought it was more than pretty good, huh?
Yeah. When I found out from a couple of the other guys he works with, they were like, yeah, he dragged us out there the next day. Thanks for that, because that was awesome. So I was like, yeah, no problem. We'll hopefully find some more stuff while we're driving around. So.
We know all the good stuff, good eats.
Oh, wow. It just started pouring rain, I think.
Yeah.
Did it really? How fitting.
Yeah, and I think I'm not on the Skyway right now, so that's good.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, are you?
Oh, you should
you
see
guys
it now
are
by
home
night. I know you flew over it, right?
Yes.
You should see it by night now. They've lit it up underneath with all these color changing lights.
And then it hits the water like that?
Oh yeah,
that's
it's
cool.
Beautiful. They it's blue and white now for Christmas. It was pink for breast cancer awareness. They've done a bunch of different colors with it. It makes my drives in the dark of the morning wonderful. So
it was so foggy the other day.
Yeah, the other day I could barely see it, which is, we're coming up on the anniversary of the crash. So
There's always something going on in that bridge. I would not have known what that bridge was, the name of it, had it not been for you guys. And that's why I was so excited, like I said, when I snapped the photo out of the window of the airplane. I'm like, Mark, isn't this the Sunshine Skyway Bridge? Oh my God. It's so weird because it's almost like seeing a celebrity, non-human celebrity when you see something that you've been talking about so many times.
You know, when we fly over Vegas, it's the same thing. We're like, oh my gosh, it's the Luxor. It's this, it's that. You drive by them all the time. We're all flipping out. And then, but then we also go, oh, look, there's Shannon.
Somewhere down there. Hey.
No, we need to see her, but we need to get you back here again because there's still so much more for you to do.
Yeah. Well, and I would like to actually go out with you guys to some of these locations. That would be so fun to do some video stuff with you guys.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We will arrange that at some point. We will make that happen. So.
Absolutely.
I can put it in the budget, I'm sure.
Yeah, that's right. I know Elizabeth's got this.
Yep. All right. Well, you guys have a wonderful, happy holiday.
You guys too.
And stay scary.
Yeah, stay super scary, spooky, creepy, eerie, freaky.
Yep, and we will see you on the other side.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. First there is summer, and then there is spring. the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, "Now get up and walk across the room." And he comes back and he says, "Where are your footprints?" They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.